What if everything you've been told about money is backwards? What if inflation isn't an accident, a market cycle, or a side effect of global events, but a feature of a system designed to extract wealth from you without your permission? And what if the real puppet master behind this quiet extraction isn't the dollar, not the Federal Reserve, not even the banks, but the global sovereign bond market, the most misunderstood and most powerful financial machine in human history? Here's the uncomfortable truth. If you don't understand bonds, you don't understand the fiat system, because bonds are the system. Every recession, every inflation wave, every currency crisis, every boom, every bust, every unprecedented event, all of it, quietly engineered by a mechanism operating in the shadows. Shadow banking collateral chains built on sovereign debt, the mechanism no government dares to explain in public. The mechanism that turns your labor into someone else's leverage. The mechanism that makes inflation permanent. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll see that the bond market isn't just big. It's the invisible operating system of global power. Before we begin, quick check-in. Where are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments so we know how far this message is traveling. And if you're ready for the unfiltered truth, the truth no financial textbook dares to print, hit subscribe, because today's breakdown isn't just information, it's a warning. Let's rewind the clock. Most people think currencies came first, that governments created money, then later created debt. Wrong, debt came before money. And since ancient Mesopotamia, rulers discovered a trick. If you can issue IOUs and force your population to accept them, congratulations, you've created a controlled economy. The Roman Empire did it with aureus-backed tax obligations. Medieval kings did it with tally sticks. 19th century empires did it with gold-linked bonds. Every empire discovered the same cheat code. Create debt gives enforce acceptance, gives inflate away obligations, gives repeat. But here's where the pattern turns sinister. When the world left the gold standard first, partially in 1933, then fully in 1971, the last restraint vanished. Money stopped being money. Money became government debt. This is the part 99% of people never learn. When you hold cash, you are holding a tiny slice of the national debt. Inflation? That's the slow liquidation of your slice. Now, let's connect history to the modern world. In 1944, the Bretton Woods Conference created a new global hierarchy. The US dollar was crowned king, and US treasuries became the global risk-free asset. Translation: the entire world agreed to store value in US government debt. This wasn't a financial agreement. This was a geopolitical power play disguised as economics. But here's the twist. By making treasuries the center of global finance, the world accidentally built a brittle system. Because treasuries weren't just used for saving, they became the backbone of a new shadow system that emerged quietly in the 1980s and exploded in the 2000s. Shadow banking collateral chains. Banks, hedge funds, money market funds, and foreign governments began using U.S. treasuries as collateral to borrow, lend, and create synthetic dollars outside the formal banking system. These synthetic dollars became the Eurodollar system, an unregulated offshore dollar creation machine. And once again, history repeated itself. In ancient empires, rulers issued debt to maintain power. Today, governments issue sovereign bonds. In ancient empires, debt promises inflated away. Today, inflation silently taxes savers across the globe. In ancient empires, collapses came when trust in the IOU faded. Today, the same cracks are forming. Sound familiar? Look around. 2008 liquidity crisis driven by collateral failure. 2011 European sovereign debt meltdown. 2019 repo market seizure. 2020 global yield crash. 2022 bond market wipeout with $31 trillion in losses. Every crisis ties back to one thing: bond markets and the collateral system built on top of them. When bonds wobble, the global economy shakes. When bonds collapse, currencies die. And when currencies die, civilizations reset. This isn't new. This is the oldest pattern in economic history. The only difference now? The system is global, the leverage is unimaginable, and the consequences will be historic. Here's the twist. The true engine of the fiat system isn't the central bank, the treasury, or even the commercial banks. It's something far more opaque. The shadow banking collateral chain, a multi-trillion-dollar network where the same treasury bond is reused, rehypothecated, and releveraged sometimes 10 or even 20 times. This is the dark secret of the modern financial world. The global economy runs on borrowed collateral, not money, not productivity, not innovation, collateral, and not your collateral, not corporate collateral, not land, but sovereign bonds. Every pension fund, insurance company, hedge fund, investment bank, and foreign government is plugged into this invisible plumbing system. When a pension fund in Canada buys a U.S. Treasury, a hedge fund in Hong Kong might be using that same treasury as collateral, while a bank in London borrows against it, and a money market fund in Switzerland lends it out overnight. One bond, 4 loans, 100 transactions. A single failure. Catastrophic. And here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. The system is so over-leveraged that it cannot survive rising interest rates, falling bond prices, or sovereign default. Which means the system cannot survive the very inflation it creates. Who built this monster? You won't believe the name. Because the person who enabled the modern collateral system wasn't a shadowy banker or a Wall Street titan. It was a central bank chairman who changed one rule, one technical adjustment that unleashed the most dangerous financial mechanism in human history. The receipt is wilder than you think. Now we peel back the curtain. The primary mechanism, shadow banking collateral chains. This is the hidden machine. The heart of the fiat inflation debt system. The unseen force controlling interest rates, inflation, liquidity, and global stability. Let's simplify. Step 1. Governments issue bonds. The US, Europe, Japan, China all issue sovereign debt to fund spending. Nothing shocking, until you realize the scale. The US alone owes $35 trillion. Total global sovereign debt exceeds $97 trillion. And global financial assets tied to sovereign collateral exceed $420 trillion. Already excessive. But now the twist. STEP to banks rehypothecate bonds. Rehypothecation means you give your bond to a bank gives, they use it as collateral gives, they also lend it to someone else gives, who lends it to someone else gives, who lends it to someone else. This is how one treasury bond can support 3 hedge fund trades, 6 repo loans for money market obligations, 7 derivatives contracts. By the time the chain completes, the original bond may have been used 15 times. This creates synthetic liquidity, fake dollars, fake leverage, fake stability. But here's the moral hazard. When something happens to the original bond, downgrade, volatility spike, or price drop, the entire chain collapses. 2008, a collateral chain collapse around mortgage bonds. 2019 repo crisis. Collateral shortage. 2020 COVID yield crash. Collateral panic. 2022 bond meltdown. Collateral devaluation. The system is fragile by design. Step 3. Inflation becomes a tool, not a failure. Governments discovered a dark advantage. Inflation reduces real debt. If you owe $1 trillion and inflate 8% a year, you're quietly erasing $80 billion of obligations annually. Inflation isn't a bug. It's the silent debt eraser. But inflation destroys the public's purchasing power. So why tolerate it? Because the alternative is catastrophic. Deflation causes collateral values to fall, and the entire shadow system implodes. This is why central banks panic when inflation is too low. Rates stayed near 0% for 14 years straight. Every crisis ends with quantitative easing. not to stimulate the economy, but to protect collateral values and prevent chain collapse. Step 4. The bond market becomes the global central bank. Here's the biggest revelation. Central banks don't control the bond market. The bond market controls them. When bond yields rise, governments panic. When bond yields fall, central banks cheer. When liquidity dries up, the system stops breathing. This is why Stanley Druckenmiller famously said, "The bond market is the world's boss." He wasn't exaggerating. Behind every inflation cycle, behind every recession, behind every stimulus package, behind every bailout is a simple, brutal truth. The bond market must be kept stable or the entire global financial system collapses. Step 5. Synthetic dollars take over the world. The Eurodollar system, offshore, unregulated dollar creation, dwarfs the U.S. domestic money supply. Fed money supply, M2. $20 trillion Eurodollar synthetic supply, $57 trillion estimated. Meaning, most dollars are not created by the U.S. government. They are created by shadow banking collateral chains. And since these synthetic dollars are backed by treasuries, treasuries are the world's money, not currency, not gold, not reserves, sovereign bonds. Step 6. The system becomes a perpetual inflation machine. If synthetic dollars rely on collateral, and collateral relies on bond prices, and bond prices collapse when interest rates rise, then central banks have no choice. Keep interest rates low, print money to buy bonds. Engineer inflation to reduce real debt. Never allow the chain to contract. This is why inflation keeps returning. Debt keeps growing. Bond markets keep wobbling. Crises keep repeating. Soft landings never last. The system is addicted to inflation, addicted to debt, addicted to artificial liquidity. It cannot stop. It cannot slow. It cannot reverse course. Shocking number 1 in 2020. The Fed injected $4.5 trillion in months, more money than the previous 100 years combined. Shocking number 2 in 2022. Global bond markets lost $31 trillion in value, the largest destruction of wealth in financial history. Shocking number 3. Japan's government debt is 255% of GDP. Yet its bond yields stay near zero because the central bank buys nearly 50% of all bonds. Shocking number 4. U.S. interest expense crossed $1.1 trillion per year, more than the defense budget. Shocking number 5. Over 80% of all repo transactions rely on U.S. Treasuries as the only acceptable collateral. This is not sustainable. This is engineered instability. The illusion of stability supported by parasitic finance and chains of leverage stretching across the globe. The world believes inflation is a temporary annoyance. But inflation is the symptom of a system built entirely on borrowed time, where collapse is delayed, not prevented. This is the true danger of the modern bond fiat system. It works perfectly, till suddenly it doesn't. So here's the final warning. The next crisis won't look like 2008. It won't look like 2020. It won't look like the dot-com bust. It will be a collateral crisis, a sudden evaporation of trust in the one thing holding the global financial system together. Sovereign debt, a world where governments owe too much. Central banks have printed too much, and the shadow system has leveraged too much. Cannot survive rising yields, political instability, or sovereign defaults. And yet, all three are accelerating. The system is cornered. Inflation is permanent. Debt is irreversible. Bond volatility is rising, and synthetic liquidity is cracking. The next collapse won't start with stocks. It won't start with banks. It will start with bonds. Because bonds are the foundation. Bonds are the collateral. Bonds are the oxygen. Remove the oxygen, the system suffocates. And when it suffocates, the illusion ends. The fiat system, the debt economy, the inflation machine. It all resets. That is the real conspiracy, a global financial architecture built on borrowed collateral, borrowed time, and borrowed trust. So here's the question we leave with. Are we wiser now? Or are we walking the same path in better suits? If you want more unfiltered truth about the systems shaping your life without your consent, hit the like button, share this video with someone who thinks inflation is normal, and subscribe for the next deep dive, because the collapse won't warn you, but I will.